What's up, Drop Pod listeners? You can check out new episodes of the Drop Podcast every Tuesday and Thursday wherever you listen to podcasts. You can find all of our content on YouTube at the Drop Golf Podcast and on our socials. That's Instagram and Twitter at the Drop_pod. No matter how you consume us, like, subscribe, rate, review, all that good stuff. Follow and listen along.
This is the Drop Podcast where we talk golfing in the Garden State. I'm Mike Poro, and this is Ryan Coulott.
What's up, Drop Pod people? Back for episode 2 of the week. As we said, if you did not know what's going on or you're new to what's up, we're splitting the episodes. Our episode with Mike and I was on Tuesday. And this episode is going to be dedicated just to our guest for this week. And this week's guest is a banger. He's the voice of NBC Golf, none other than Mr. Dan Hicks. Dan Hicks 2.0, actually, Mike. We had Dan on last year about this time, and he was kind enough to come on again. I mean, I don't know what else to say. You get a guy that's on TV even. You've done, you're kicking up in the world. You get a guy like Dan Hicks, you're really doing something. I mean, he is not just the voice of golf. He's going to be the voice of the Olympics, which we get into for the interview. We get into his predictions for the U.S. Open. I mean, it's amazing that he comes on and wants to chat with us, really.
Listen, it's a loaded interview. It's a fun interview. And just like listening to him, his voice is absolutely identical.
It's really it's funny to hear him say your name, right? He says, hey Ryan, how's it going? And it's just like, I know that voice, and that voice said my name. It was really cool. So it was, just a great interview. Again, we talk U.S. Open. We talk who's going to be, the NBC hasn't found their second analyst to be on the 18th hole with him. So they're looking, we talked Smiley Kaufman. We talked Kevin Kisner. We talked about a bunch of people there going to the U.S. Open. Again, we get into his Olympic schedule this summer. So it was a loaded topic with kind of all over the place there as far as what's going on there. So again, thanks for sticking along and enjoy our interview with Dan Hicks. Cheers.
George Wall Ford in Red Bank, New Jersey is family owned and operated, proudly serving New Jersey residents with superior customer service since 1960. Rye, share your story about your experience there.
Mike, I went on a tangent in one of our episodes previously about it, but I can't say enough good things about George Wall Ford. I needed a new car. I had an old. I loved the brand that I had. I loved, it was an SUV, but had 165,000 miles on it. It was just time, So I hopped on over to George Wall Ford. I saw our guy Jerry, and Jerry and his team were awesome. I mean, from stem to stern, they're there. They're helping. They're knowledgeable. They have so many cars on the lot that you can go in and say, hey, I want a sunroof, a navigation. I want this kind of rims on it. I want this kind of this, that, and the other thing. There's a great chance that they have that car with all your specs, the color, all that thing. Me, I didn't particularly care. I just, I was like, hey, I want to be high up in the car, right? I need an SUV. I'm a big guy. I got a dog. I got golf clubs. I got beach chairs in the summer. I need something that's a little more rugged, a little more, again, I like to be higher in my car. And I went and saw Jerry. He pointed me in the right direction. And again, it's awesome to have that kind of help and support from your salesman to the finance guy to even they got somebody who helps you set up your car, right? I got an app on my phone now that's got my auto start on it. I can locate my car if I don't know where it is. I could take a trip to Japan if I wanted to and be like, did I lock my car? And I can go into the app and lock my car. So even people helping you set up that stuff, just the hands-on approach over there is incredible. So if you need a car, head on over to George Wall. And go ask for Jerry. They were awesome there. Again, stem to stern from everybody. I can't say enough good things about it. It was an unbelievable experience.
So to Ryan's point, there isn't a better place to shop for a brand new car Just call 732-704-1932 and ask for Jeremy Wall. George Wall Ford in Red Bank for all your car buying needs. So today's guest is a little 2.0 version here. The first time that Dan Hicks came on, it was one for the ages. And we are going to continue that in year 2 here. Today's guest is NBC's longest tenured on-air personality, NBC's golf lead golf play-by-play commentator, Dan Hicks. Dan, thank you so much for coming on today's show.
That's quite the intro, and that's also dating me, guys. But I really appreciate that, and I look forward to another session here. I had such a good time with you guys.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank
in
you.
the first round, so hopefully we can follow up.
Listen, before we even get started, I got to pass along a message. I was talking to Stu Hagestad the other day, and we're trying to line him up to get him on the podcast. And I said, we're having you on, and, being a Met guy and being in the area, he said, well, listen, tell Dan I said hello. He's a great guy. He's going to be another great guest for you guys. So I did want to pass that along to you.
Good. I actually had a locker right next to Stu's at LACC last year when I played it prior to the U.S. Open last summer. And they gave me President Reagan's locker at the club there. He was a member, and they've kept it in perpetuity. And when I saw Stu, I said, "Hey, I was right next to your locker." He's like, "That's pretty cool. They gave you the President Reagan locker," because I'm right next to that. So it's all good. Stu's a great guy, and what a fabulous amateur career that guy's had. Incredible.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
Yeah, that's amazing. Is there anything that says President Reagan?
Yeah. There's like a presidential seal, and it says President Ronald Reagan.
Wow.
So it's pretty cool stuff. I was honored, really honored. I didn't expect it, so it was very cool.
That's really
so. As we kind of get into the year, I mean, if you recall, you hopped on last year right before the Players, and I think there was a lot of conversation about Cam Smith not showing up to the Players and what was it going to be like. And as we've kind of now fast forward, what's this now, 13 months ahead, really nothing has changed in terms of the layout, in terms of are the live guys coming back? Are they not coming back? I know there's been tons of conversations. For someone like yourself that's now back into the groove of the 2024 season, what's that been like in terms of how to handle certain things? Maybe what your thoughts or expectations might have been leading up to this point. Where are things at for you?
Well, I can honestly say I sure didn't expect us to be where we are still this far into it, and it's all very disappointing. I think it's been sad for golf in many ways. On the other hand, we've had some great tournaments in the throes of this whole process. So I tell everybody kind of the same thing. I think sports eventually wins the day. It's such a good product. Golf is such a good product coming down the stretch. It's just, there's few other sports that can kind of rival as far as drama, especially if you love the game. And so it's still thrived. But I have to say, at this year's Players Championship, since it wasn't a major where the live guys are participating, it was different. And I really missed those guys in the mix, because the Players is such an incredible event. And to not have those guys all there duking it out on the TPC Sawgrass was unfortunate. I hope that's the last time that happens, but it's just no indications right now, guys, as you know, and everybody else knows, of anything getting any closer to being resolved. So I'm still optimistic after all this time that it's going to get resolved and we're going to get the best players in the world playing against each other. But it's just been disappointing not to have all these guys together, because that's what sports is all about, right? If you're competing at the highest level, you want to play against the guys, all of them together at the highest level. And we just haven't seen that.
Yeah. I think that's been one of the biggest killers, especially with how well, Scotty has been playing. Really, is it'd be nice to see what he could have done, even though I think he still would have done it regardless with
Right.
Rahm and Koepka and all these guys in the field. But let's get into when you guys kicked this off, out in Kapalua, kind of going through your early part of the season, I think you guys had some really, really fun, good tournaments. And I know that Scotty winning kind of like those last couple there between the Arnold Palmer and the Players, what has been the start for you guys? Has it been because I guess as a viewer, I've seen a lot of I don't want to say no name guys, but unheard of guys. It's not the same, big time player that's drawing all the ratings type of guys. It's been different stories. And, talk a little bit about how that's been, because I think the one really that stands out for me is the Jake Knapp story. I think watching what he's done and just kind of his swing the whole nine. What has the first part of the season been like for you guys?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. I think it's basically been the Scotty show of the two events that we did with him, Bay Hill and the Players, which just started this incredible run that he's been on. But also, I think the Jake Knapp story was one of my favorites of the year. Austin Eckroat, who absolutely killed it at the Cognizant, formerly known as the Honda Classic at PGA National. It's really fun for me and the rest of the guys, and I mean this sincerely, to sometimes depart from the stars that we all know who they are, and we all know basically their stories. And don't get me wrong, watching the best players in the world thrive in big time tournaments and win that's really what it's all about. But I think the other side of sports is discovering the stories that happen. And Jake Knapp's story was, I had heard of him. I really didn't know much beyond the name Jake Knapp. Heard he was a guy that was taking a while to kind of find his feet. And to see him perform in Mexico and to watch him warm up. The guy's got incredible talent, and he just went on a whole another level. And I think it's probably realizing it's not going to be easy from here on out. He had his great moment in Mexico, but he's got to continue to perform. And I think the same thing is for Nick Dunlap, who won out in the desert. That was a great story. Maybe the best story of the year, besides what Scheffler's doing, was Dunlap winning as an amateur. But he's finding out tour life is not really easy, that all of a sudden it's a job and you are on the road and you're in hotels and you're in places where you've never been and you're trying to find your way around. But anyway, all that said, it's been a blast. And that's what really my job is to do, is to kind of tell those stories. And when we have those fresh guys in there that no one really knows about, I think my job becomes even more important to just let these guys kind of come to life, tell you their background stories and how hard they've worked to get there, and their family and friends that are all here or at the events that they're at. Then let their talent take over, and the recipe becomes a really cool watch, I think, to see a guy like that break through, and the emotion, what it means to him. We saw, the guy in Hawaii, Grayson, win. That was incredible. I mean, much deserved. Guy's got a lot of talent, hasn't been able to put it together, has gone through some personal struggles and strife, and that was a great story. So we had all those great stories and Scotty Scheffler, and that's basically summed up our season so far.
Yeah. It's been crazy. It truly has. And I think, and I'm starting to like the idea of I think Smiley has done a really, really good job on the telecast. I do. And I think having someone like him that is connected to the guys, that can, throw a little zinger in there every so often. It doesn't someone takes it personal. Talk a little bit about, and then you've also had a different person up there with you often, you have, and I think Kisner's been absolutely phenomenal. That's something I'll get into, but talk about your crew this year, because it has been a little bit of a rotating door, more or less.
Yeah, if you haven't heard, we've been looking around for a guy in the chair up at 18, and we have had a myriad of contestants, so to speak. But I think it's been a really fun time to see what these guys can do in that particular seat. You brought up Smiley. I think Smiley Kaufman is as natural of a talent as we've seen in a long, long time come through the world of golf. He just kind of has that it factor where he kind of gets television. He really, I guess, matured quickly and got the hang of it quickly. And I sat with him in the seat when Nick Dunlap won the U.S. Amateur last year at Cherry Hills, and I kind of, that was basically his first kind of big tournament in that chair. But he's so versatile. He can do his happy hour, which I think has been a breath of fresh air on Fridays, and he can go on the ground and do his thing. So he's really one of the most versatile guys in the game right now. But we're continuing to look. And when Paul Azinger didn't come back, it was really one of those situations where there really wasn't a clear-cut guy out there that is the guy. And so we decided that this was the best way to give everybody kind of a taste of a lot of different personalities, and to kind of give them a tryout on the run before basically tabbing somebody as the new 18th hole analyst. Because the last thing you want to do is put somebody in that position when either they're not ready or maybe they're not going to turn out to be the right guy, because you don't know really what they're all about. So I think this has been the best process to find out who that person is. So we're still looking, and we're still kind of gathering information on all these guys, but Kiz has been phenomenal. I think he has also an it factor to him and a relatability with the audience out there that really connected right at the get-go, and he hadn't had any experience doing it. So he was great. Everybody from Paul McGinley to Smiley and Luke Donald was sensational, I thought. Just impeccable credentials coming off a Ryder Cup win. So, all those guys. Bramble Chambly did a great job in there. They're all different. They all bring different kind of components to the job, so to speak. So, stay tuned to see who ends up getting in there on a full-time basis, because it's gonna be fascinating. In the meantime, we'll probably keep everybody even more off balance in the meantime.
Dan, is that hard for you to kind of juggle with the different personalities? Each person brings their own little flair, from Kiz to Smiley to Luke to, is there any, how difficult is that for you on like a week to week basis?
Yeah, for 20 years, all I did was put the headset on and sit down next to Johnny Miller, and it was just a really nice feeling to have, to just know what you're going to get. And that was basically the true for our entire team. When Roger was there, Gary was there, we would just go to the event, sit down, do our homework, and it was fantastic. So, and then after that, it was Paul Azinger for 5 years, who was fantastic and who was also a really good friend who I miss. And I do miss the camaraderie of both Johnny and Paul Azinger. That's a given. But where we are right now, it is different to kind of adjust to guys that come in. They all have different styles, but it's also been kind of fun to kind of reach out. And I think it kind of breaks me out of maybe a certain kind of pattern too. In this business, as you guys know, it's always changing. I think you can always get better. And that's one of the things that attracted me to it in the first place, was that I've been doing this for decades now. I've been at NBC for 32 years. No single show, whether it's Olympic swimming or football that I've done, or tennis or golf, no single show is the same. So when you throw a different analyst in there, it really kind of mixes the whole pile up to where you're challenged, but that's what you want. And it's been a challenge, but it's been a welcome kind of, change of pace.
Yeah, and I think as you kind of like look ahead now, I think you got the big one on the horizon. I think you got the US Open. It's at Pinehurst. You got all these things here. And I think a lot of people have started to wonder, like, who's going to be the guest next to you that's going to kind of run the show? And I be remiss if I didn't ask the question, because I think this is the next big one. It is a major. All the live guys are going to be there. And to your point, everybody that has sat next to you has had their own little unique good thing that they bring to the table, whether it's Luke Donald and his his accent and his background and his wins and the Ryder Cup, or even Kiz, just his relatability. Like, I get it if you can't say, or you don't even frankly know, but there's got to be a plan that's going to be in place. Would a final announcement be for that one, or you're still thinking down the road still to FedEx Cup?
Yeah, I'll be honest with you, Mike. There's not going to be a final decision for the U.S. Open, and there may not be one after that. I think this whole process is going to continue, and I think who you'll see in there will be either one of the guys that we've used or somebody else entirely different, but it'll be under the same theme of, we're trying to continue to find the best possible solution to this whole thing, at the same time, giving the people a worthy analyst in there and absolutely giving everything we have to putting on a great show in the U.S. Open. There's been some criticism out there as to, oh my gosh, we've got a major championship coming up and NBC hasn't named their guy yet. But we're not ready to name the guy just as yet. So, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but at the same time, the guy in there is going to be qualified and is going to be ready to work along with the rest of our great people on our production team to put on a show that we cannot wait to do at Pinehurst. We've got a lot of cool things that we have planned for it, and that person's going to dovetail right in there, and it's going to be business as usual for us at a big time championship.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's been the exciting thing. And to your point, like, just like you, I've read all the things as well. Like, what's NBC doing? Why hasn't there been someone named for this spot? It's a big time spot. The U.S. Open, it's Pinehurst, and we can continue to go down the line. But I guess to your point, rather than just name someone, we'd rather not rush. We want to get it right. And if that takes us 5 months, 6 months, 8 months, whatever it ends up taking, the point is to get it right. And I think, I think from a viewer's perspective, someone like me that lives it and watches it all the time, and I'm just like addicted to it. I just think that like Kiz has that factor that relates again to like the younger crowd as well. He's got that relatability that kind of like can branch off what you do, branches off what Smiley does, and just adds that little like flair. And I kind of wish, and I don't mean this in a negative way, but like his golf game just isn't there right now. Like it's not. He's struggling. He admits it. He doesn't want to go out like this. He said it recently on the Golf Digest, podcast that like if he wins, maybe he would just hang it up, but he doesn't want to go out like this. He wants to continue to prove himself that he can still win. But like this is a perfect gig for him.
Sounds like you like him.
I just think, you know what I mean?
I do too.
I just think he relates to guys like me, like the everyday guy. Like, what you're doing. Your voice is one of the best. It's perfect. Then you add in Smiley and what he does in terms of his relationships. And then you just add a guy like Kiz who's meshed with all angles, all of it. I just think he's the perfect fit for a job like that.
You make a lot of good points. I think Kiz's personality, I think in one word, he's relatable. And I think you're on it there. I think that immediately when he worked with us in Hawaii, we had great response from his work there at the opener in Hawaii. And I think Kiz is at a place in his career right now where he isn't quite ready to hang it up, but I think that he's realistic enough to know that broadcasting could be a great place for him. I think he knows that he's a natural at it as well. I think he's got all the components that you just described to relate with the people, be a real person. That's what people want out of somebody, that analyst, right? They want somebody that's not going to snow them, not going to BS them. They want somebody that can kind of relate to them, the viewer at home, and not be up on some pedestal and talking down to the audience. And that's what Kiz does such a great job of doing. He talks to you, and I think that he's got a bright future in broadcasting as well if the playing career doesn't work out. But I do think that there's some unfinished business in his playing career and in his competitive heart that he wants to make sure is taken care of before he goes ahead and tells himself, all right, I'm full-time broadcaster, because he's smart enough to know that it's really hard to dabble in both, and you've really got to commit to one or the other. And I think that that's one of those things that only he is going to be able to decide.
Yeah, and I think for like a viewer on my end, I hope he doesn't decide too late to where you guys then find somebody else and you look back and you kind of say like, man, he would have been the right guy had he just kind of, taken that leap, saying, all right, like I can't do both. I found a new niche right here with this. This is my thing. I'm kind of hopeful in that aspect that he doesn't, in a sense, miss the boat, because listen, there's not many of those seats. There's not many of those seats. And when you get your opportunity, it's like Eminem said, you got to like seize that opportunity. And it's kind of like, I guess from a viewer's perspective, I kind of would love to see him in there. I would.
Yeah, well, your vote has been tabulated there, Mike. You and a lot of other people love Kiz and would like to see him in there, and you never know.
And then obviously, as you get into Pinehurst, right? What's the schedule like after that? Because I know like things have kind of like changed a little bit with the schedule and things of when your telecast goes on and CBS and things along those lines. Like what follows the US Open?
Well, I could tell you what I'll be doing after the U.S. Open. I'll be going straight to the U.S. Olympic swimming trials. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, so it's a big year for NBC and the Olympics in Paris. And I will be headed right to the Olympic trials, which are going to be staged at Lucas Oil Stadium, of all places, a football stadium. So, Tommy Roy, our producer, who produces Olympic swimming with me as well, and our director, Joe Martin, who directs golf, we happen to all be a part of the Olympic swimming crew that'll be beelining up to Indianapolis immediately after the U.S. Open. The trials will have already started on that Saturday, third round day of the U.S. Open, and then there'll be 3 days in the books before we finally go on Tuesday, the first day of the trial. So that's where I'm headed. And then after that, I've got a little bit of time before we head over to the actual Olympics, which will be preceded by the next major at Royal Troon. So the Open Championship will go directly from Scotland to Paris. So that's my itinerary. I'm doing the Women's Open as well at the end of May, which will be, I always look forward to it. It's the greatest championship they play, no doubt about it. And that's at Lancaster Country Club in Pennsylvania. So that's kind of my schedule. But that doesn't mean that we're not doing other golf, but I won't be involved in any of the other golf. And to be honest with you, I'm not sure exactly what is on NBC and what's on Golf Channel, but the majority of it will be CBS. They kind of take over PGA Tour golf for most of the summer. We have our USGA events I spoke of. The US Senior Open also is on my agenda as well. That's at Newport Country Club. So I'll be doing all 3 of those USGA events along with, the Open Championship and the US Open and Paris and the Olympic trials. So that pretty much fills up my boat, so to speak, for the rest of the summer. Before, when I get back from the Olympics, I get like a week or off or 10 days or something like that, and it's time to do the playoffs. So FedEx Cup playoffs happen in August. So that's also on the agenda, and that's way too much of my schedule that you need to know at this point.
No, listen. From a person that like always likes to look and see what everybody's doing, it interests me like how much travel is really involved. And I know that the Olympics is something that you hold true and dear to your heart. That's like those Olympics. Again, I know we talked about it when you came on last March about like the Michael Phelps call and all those guys. Like how much is like, that it's an Olympic year, that your schedule is going to be hectic. But I think when you get over there, how much does that like make you turn back into like a little bit of a kid? Like, I'm a kid in a candy store watching these Olympic athletes go for the gold. They're doing it at levels that like we only, can imagine. Like, what is that like when you go back over there?
It's incredible. It never disappoints. Obviously the competition at some Olympics, in this case, swimming for me since '96, I've done every Olympic swimming. And so Rowdy Gaines and I will do our 8th Olympics together, which is just absolutely mind boggling to think of, especially when you know that every one of those comes every 4 years. So, yeah, it is. You used it. It's a kid in a candy store. It's knowing that you're going to get guaranteed excitement every time you go. And with all the stories that swirl around the Olympics, it's like a soap opera. It's like, episode 1 is day 1 of the competition. And then you get a little further and you start to learn who all the characters are. You'll start to figure out who a Léon Marchand is, who's this French swimmer who's going to be representing his country in Paris, but who actually trains in the United States at Arizona State when Bob Bowman was the coach there, who was Michael Phelps's coach. So you're going to be hearing a lot about this Léon Marchand, who has a lot of the same versatile abilities that Michael Phelps had. He's going to be swimming the IMs. He's going to be favored to win multiple medals. So those are the stories that are fun to tell. And that you've got more than just your typical sports audience tuned in. You've got grandparents, parents, sons and daughters, and little kids all tuned in who get in front of the television to watch the Olympics. It's kind of throwback television, Mike, right? It's like in all this day and age of streaming and all the options you have, it's still still one of the biggest spectacles in television, the Olympics, and Paris is going to be just spectacular.
Yeah, it's like an event. It's like it's a movie. Like we're all going to get together, we're going to get our popcorn, and we're going to go back and sit there and watch. It's you
Yeah.
know that's what it feels like. Because I still remember the time when Phelps did his thing, and then even if you go forward, you talk about like Usain Bolt and all these guys. Like you still remember the stories, the Katie Ledeckis. You still remember those types of things because I think you don't always see greatness and you don't always see these types of athletes because you still live like on a professional level. So when these types of athletes finally get a platform and they get a stage and they do their incredible things, it's like, wow, these people truly are special.
They are. I think I told you maybe in the last podcast we did the pressure and the clutch swims that Michael Phelps had to come up with every 4 years, because knowing that you only get every 4 years you get your chance. And so these kids that are on the blocks, I say kids because a lot of them are, when they get on the blocks and they make that final, we and I have a responsibility to tell their story, because I know I've always known in the back of my mind that mom and dad and all their team and everything they've been training for their entire lives has come down to this moment, this 2 lengths of the pool in the 100 meters or whatever it is. Katie Ledecky swimming crazy, 1,500 meters and long distances, who's been at it a long, long time. You've got her at this kind of known level, and then you've got all these people that you have absolutely no idea who they are and what their stories are and why should I care about these people. Well, that's our job to do it, and it's just it's a privilege and an honor to do it, especially with a guy like Ratty Gaines, who's just a sensational human being, and I don't use that lightly. He's just a fantastic guy.
Yeah, you guys kill it. You do. You do. You guys just you bounce off each other very well. It's a very enjoyable listen. Not only a watch, but it's enjoyable listen. Which, no offense, at times can be tough for a viewer if things aren't flowing. And you guys do that very well. I'll leave you with two questions because again, I know I could pick your brain like a lot of my guests in the past. One, how is the golf game these days? Because I know here in the Northeast, we're finally seeing some sun. It's finally, it's a nicer weather comparatively speaking to what we have. How is the golf game these days?
Oh, wow. I just played in a member guest down south with a good buddy of mine, and had all sorts of optimism going, so to speak. I had played maybe 4 times in 4 months leading up to this thing. But I played a couple times here. You mentioned it's starting to thaw out a little bit in the Northeast. I played a couple times at Wingfoot. Didn't play too bad as far as being off that long. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna be fine down there. And I was fine for the first day down there. We were second in our flight, which is we got a chance. And then on the second day of the competition, we played the Georgia football coach, Kirby Smart, was in the field with his guest, or his member, I should say. He was the guest. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm going to really play well. I'm going to show Kirby Smart, that Dan Hicks has some game. I could not have played worse than I did. But that's golf, right? You've got
100%.
These expectations and you're like, you want to do it so bad. And sometimes when you want to do it bad, it doesn't work out that way. But we had a blast down there. And so the game, in a nutshell, Mike, needs a lot of work. And I hopefully, in the time off between now and when things get cranked up in June, I'll kind of get things going a little bit. But that's my whole story. I get things going for a little bit, and then I don't play for like 2 months. So I wish I could get at it a little bit more on a regular basis.
Listen, with your schedule, I can promise you, it's probably super, super hard to get out there and play, especially on a routine basis where we all know in golf, like if you take some time off, forget about it the next time you pick up a golf club. And I guess the last question I have is, who do you think wins the U.S. Open? I guess even as someone in your seat, I don't even know if you're allowed to make a prediction. I don't even know if you're allowed to have like quote bias in that respect, but you getting to see what these guys do often, you understand the history behind Pinehurst and Payne Stewart and Martin Keimer, and now it's finally going to come back every 5 years to Pinehurst. Father's Day weekend. We could go on and on about the U.S. Open and the importance. knowing where the game is at now and all these guys finally getting an opportunity to come back together, just like they did at Augusta, like who would you have to say has the best chance, or, a few guys? Who do you see up there?
Can I say Scotty Scheffler?
Yeah.
Go out on a limb and say Scotty Scheffler. But really, the guy can win on any course
I
because he's
know.
got
I know.
he's got every facet of the game. The only thing that leaves him once in a while for little snippets now is the putting. But I think that golf course is really made for him. I really do. I think his short game is just incredible. Whoever is going to compete and contend there on those turtleback upside down bowls is got to have a good short game. I really think that's got to be one of the ingredients that you've got to have. And another guy that kind of comes to mind is Brian Harman. I think that I know I'm calling out a couple recent major champions here, but he's always been a good U.S. Open type of player, a grinder, and I think that the golf course is going to play as difficult as it possibly can. I don't know, since the Ben Crenshaw, Bill Corr redo when they made it, a little more rustic, it's a little bit more favorable as far as if you spray it around a little bit. But I think that a Brian Harman is anybody that needs to grind in the short game and have a lot of 6-8 footers for par, I think is going to be right in it. And I think those two names kind of come to the top of the heap right away. But
How about the
it's
guy
sports.
that used to wear red?
Boy, that would be incredible, but I don't know. You said that used to wear red. You mean he still
Well,
wears red, right?
yeah, I know, but listen.
You
I
threw
don't
me
think
off
there's
there. I'm like, wait a minute.
I don't think there's a bigger fan of Tiger Woods than me. And Ryan and I get back and forth about I need to give up on him, and I just can't. I just feel like there's one run
But you
left.
said used to wear red. What do you
Yeah,
mean by that?
because I feel like I just haven't been able to see him wear it red on Sundays as much as I'd like to see him wear it, and
Gotcha.
I think the calls that I'm so ingrained of hearing hasn't happened in quite some time.
No. I think you and the rest of the sporting world would love to see Tiger take one more run at one of these things. It's a flat course, and I think he just seems so labored. And that Friday round that he played, that was a really bad weather round where he played incredible at Augusta. I thought was just unbelievable that a guy like that who's been through what he's been through at age 48 was able to, conquer a golf course in those conditions, which are absolutely brutal. So that tells you that there's something there still. And I just think he got just absolutely wiped out by the week. And I think moving around a golf course like Augusta, which is up and down and all over the place, and even though he knows the golf course so well, I think that caught up to him. So if he's got the energy and if he can stay somehow refreshed, it's going to be hopefully warm for him there. It usually is. In fact, we fight a lot of thunder showers and stuff like that in the summertime down there in Pinehurst. So it got chilly in Augusta. Maybe that had something to do with him wearing down. But I think that leg of his is just fatigued, and I think that if we can get him though in the right kind of setup, in the right kind of weather, and get that old Tiger confidence going, you get him in the contention on Sunday. You put him in that red that you talked about when he's in contention. We haven't seen it like that. We've seen him kind of make the cut, kind of act like, well, I'm going to have a really good weekend to be there, but it's just been too far out and he's been too tired. But if we get him to that Sunday and he's got some legs left, then anything can happen. And I'll never go against him in that kind of scenario. But getting him to that place has been a real chore.
Well, listen, I love the optimism because that is all I am with him. Is I'm hoping,
I'm
you're
as
reiterating
big
that?
a Tiger fan as anybody in the world. I mean, we've basically ridden the coattails of Tiger, all of us in the world of golf, and we had the pleasure to be a part of his whole arc from a teenager winning U.S. amateurs to winning 15 majors. So we're all indebted to Tiger for what he's done. And sometimes people are like, oh God, lay off the Tiger thing. He's done, da 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 da. But we're still thankful for the guy. And I think if you know Tiger and you're a Tiger believer like you think there's still one little run there, and there might be. I'm not going to say there's not.
Listen, Team Tiger. I love hearing that out of Dan Hicks' voice. I do. But listen, I can't thank you enough for coming on today to give us some time. And listen, best of luck in everything that you described that you're doing, this summer through the rest of the year. And best of luck with everything.
Mike, pleasure always being with you. We'll do it again sometime. Thanks for having me. Really.
Appreciate it, pal.